Hi everyone, this is Mahesh. Today let's have a look at Linux file directory structure and its significance. So it might be helpful for you to troubleshoot common issues that you might be facing in Linux operating system and boot issues and unknown crash issues and network issues. So whenever you open a terminal, you will land up in your home directory, which is located inside the home folder. So let's go to root directory now. Here you can see your home folder. So if you have multiple user, you will have multiple folders inside the home directory. This MMH folder is a home folder for user MMH, which contains all the information and application configuration files belonging to the user MMH, and the download files which are located inside the download directory inside MMH home folder, and music files, pictures, and documents, etc. So basically it contains everything needed for the user MMH. The what do you call, the personal information belonging to the user. Uh, so inside root directory, let's walk through each and every folder and see in brief what is there inside the folder and where it is used, right? So let's list down the contents of bin directory. Here you can see multiple binaries. What are these binaries? These binaries are the commands that you use in Linux. So if you see a binary like ls, this is the command, and ln, login, and these all are the common commands that you use in Linux. These binary files are the programs for the commands that you use. So ps for listing the processes. So I can go on and on about telling all these binaries. Yeah. So bin directory contains all the binary files here used by all the users, and the second folder in the list is boot. So inside boot, you will have a kernel image and ini tra mfs. These are the important files. This is ini tra mfs is used to detect the file system, and kernel image is as you know, the core of the Linux, and based on the type of user you are, you can have multiple kernel images and use one of those images to boot into your Linux machine. And the grub folder inside this boot directory contains the configuration files which you see in your grub menu. So if you have multiple operating system, you will have a multiple entries inside the grub.conf file. Initially, grub.conf was the configuration file used by the grub legacy, which is the previous version of grub2. Now grub2 uses grub.cnf file as its configuration file, right? So let's list down. Cat just puts all the contents of the file into this terminal. Let's list down the contents of grub.cfg file, which is the configuration file for grub.cfg. Okay, says permission denied. So let's list down the contents of conf file, right? So these configuration files, as you see, it contains basically two modules here. One is Gentoo. This is my first default operating system, and second one is Windows. So here it says this is the Gentoo, the name displayed in the grub menu, and it's the partition where the kernel image resides, and the ini trmfs file resides. So if I change this variable, it loads a different kernel image. That's all about conf file, grub conf file. So let's come back to the root directory. Here you can see the dev directory. Dev directory contains all the device nodes, I can say. Yeah, device nodes, where it's abstract, since Linux treats everything as a file. Everything in the sense your hard disk partitions and your CPU, etc., as a file. So if you list down the contents of dev directory, you can see mice, CD-ROM, CPUs, and SDA, SDA1, SDA2. These are all partitions, hard disk partitions. These are all the sessions. So this one contains information about your devices, right? So after that, you'll have etc directory. Let's go inside the etc directory here. Right, etc directory contains all the daemon processes and the configuration files which are needed for your applications, both during the boot process and after boot, different run levels. So inside the etc directory, there's an important directory called init.d. Let's see what is there inside init.d directory. Here you can see all the daemon processes like SSH if you are using remote login, and ultrasound is for sound, sound server. So this contains all the daemon processes which are needed for or the services which you use in your operating system, and the configuration files are located, might be located like inside separate directories here. These basically configure the applications, how you want to use them. So this is how etc directory is very important for you and me as well. So a home directory, I told you, it's home directory for different users. So lib directory contains the shared libraries and the static libraries. Inside the root directory, basically all system-wide hierarchy is found, which means this lib directory, you can see another lib directory inside USR directory, but it is a conventional way that lib inside the root directory contains the system-wide libraries or shared libraries. So here you can see the libraries which are basically used by the kernel, etc. So you can have a look at these files in your system. The another directory is media. Actually, media contains nothing, but it is used, media and for example run. These directories are used to mount your hard disk partitions or the CD-ROM, right? So you can mount the partitions inside these directories and access the contents of these directories. Without mounting, you cannot access the files inside the partitions. So for example, in order to mount the files, I have to be a root user. So when I log in as a root user, I can mount one of the partitions, say SDA2 inside the media. Okay, now I can access all the contents of SDA2 partition in the media folder. Let me list down the contents of media. Here you can see all the files, uh, all the files inside the partition 2, SDA2, inside this media, and I can unmount the partition as well. So mounting and unmounting option uh, allows the user to choose whether to mount automatically when the system boots, which essentially delays the boot process. Not much, but still there is a delay in mounting a partition. If user not at all want to mount the partition, he may choose to do that. So but then he have to mount the partition manually, like the way I showed you, and U mount is used to unmount the partition. So that is pretty much about the media directory. And MNT is used basically when you are compiling the kernel or ch routing to different environment, you'll be using that partition. And opt contains the the information about your devices. uh, Here is what I mean. Right, so these are the third party applications which you use: Android SDK and Google. So actually these are the binary packages which are not non-open source, non-free software. So this contains those kind of softwares here in the opt. So that's pretty much about opt. And portage is actually a Gentoo specific, it's not generic to all the Linux. And proc proc uh, proc actually means it's a process folder. It contains all the information about processes. So here you can see all the process information, interrupts and crypto, CPU info contains all the information about your CPU and processor, and FB, file systems, etc. These are all the core processes which are running. So this is all about processes. And other directory is root directory, which is actually a home directory for the root user. Then run, as I said, it's used for mounting the partitions and your CD-ROM, etc. So SBIN contains the information, the binaries which are used by the root user. So S actually says it's a super user bin directory. So executable permissions are allowed only for the root user for the binaries present inside SBIN. And stage 3 is Gentoo specific. System contains the information about your devices. For example, if you are using a laptop or notebook, you will have information about your battery and its charging status, etc., and your Wi-Fi, power button, etc. So let's go inside system directory and see what is there. Here you can see devices, firmware, kernel, power. This is what I was talking about. The power contains the information about the status of your battery. Here you can see, let me list down the, so these are the power PM test. These are the information about your devices. And here you can see multiple folders like firmware, kernel, module, etc. So this firmware contains the firmware needed for your devices, and modules in order to detect your devices. You might need some modules, for example for your uh, video card, it needs some kernel module, or yeah sorry your graphic card needs a firmware, and your Wi-Fi might need a kernel module in order to show up in your device list, or in order to activate the device. So that's pretty much about this system. And temp, as name suggests, is just a folder where you have temporary folders, and inside the user directory, actually it's usual to have a uh, you know usual to have more memory for allocated for the USR directory, since it contains everything about the applications, and uh, the header files, etc., which are basically needed for your application development or system programming, etc. So if you list down the contents of user directory, here you can see bin. It again contains the bin, but these are all application bins. There is a difference between this bin directory and the bin directory present in the root. If you list down the contents of this bin directory, here you can see lot and lot of binaries, but these are all not the commands. Of course you can use this as commands like G++ and all, but these are all not the default Linux provided programs. So these are basically the applications. Whenever you install application, if it has a binary, you can see the binary file here, and it also contains the include folder. Here you can find all the header files. These header files are by default, your compiler knows the path for this include folder, which means if you just say stdio .h, this your compiler search for this directory, this include directory, and finds the corresponding header. So it contains all the headers. You can include these headers by default in your program. And other directories are pretty much intuitive. If you see like lib, it contains static and shared libraries. If you compile and install any program, that will generate a shared library typically. So it will be seen inside this lib. Lib in turn contain multiple folder inside this, which essentially means that the shared libraries are belonging to that particular package. Local libexec, this portage is Gentoo specific. So locale contains the information about your time zone, etc. Here also you can see sbin. And share contains the applications and your desktop images of the application, not the desktop environment. And source contains the source files of the applications. So that's pretty much about USR directory. So I think that's all about the file hierarchy in Linux.